The morning of September 6, 2025, began like any other in Jackson Township, New Jersey. The air was still, the quiet of a late summer day settling over a suburban neighborhood. But by 11 a.m., that calm was shattered by the sound of gunfire, leaving residents stunned and a family forever changed. Police scanners crackled with urgency as calls poured in about shots fired at an apartment complex on Larson Road. Within minutes, patrol cars and emergency responders converged on the scene, their sirens slicing through the once peaceful atmosphere. Neighbors peered anxiously from behind windows, unsure what horror had just unfolded so close to home. When officers arrived, they discovered a young woman lying near the exit of the complex. She had been struck by multiple bullets, her life slipping away before help could arrive. Despite rapid medical response, it was clear there was nothing more they could do. That woman was 28-year-old Toraya Reid. To the world at large, her name was quickly tied to her famous brother, Naz Reid, a forward for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But in that moment, at the edge of an ordinary parking lot, she wasn't just a headline or a connection to celebrity. She was a daughter, a sister, and a vibrant young woman whose life had been violently cut short. Witnesses reported seeing a man flee the scene just moments after the gunfire. The panic was immediate. Who was he? Where had he gone? And was the danger still lingering in the neighborhood? Police worked quickly to identify the suspect, even as grief began to take root among those who knew Toraya best. The scene outside the complex became a haunting image of sudden loss. Crime scene tapes stretching across the familiar roads, flashing police lights reflecting against parked cars, and stunned residents trying to reconcile the unthinkable. For them, this wasn't just another news story. It was their community, their backyard, their lives now marked by tragedy. As the day wore on, news spread beyond Jackson Township. The headlines carried the shocking details. The sister of an NBA player gunned down in cold blood. But behind those words was a family in pieces, a brother who had lost his biggest supporter, and a community asking how something so horrific could happen in broad daylight. That September morning began in stillness, but it ended in heartbreak. What unfolded at that apartment complex was more than a crime scene. It was the opening act of a devastating story, one that would reveal layers of love, violence, and unimaginable loss. Before we continue, if this story resonated with you and you want to ensure you never miss a deep dive into stories that matter, we ask for your support. Please consider hitting that subscribe button so you can come back and revisit this and other critical stories that need be remembered. The more people who know about this case, the more awareness we can create about the dangers of domestic violence and unchecked social media rage. If you believe this story can help others, please like and share this video with your friends and family. Your simple click could be the awareness someone needs. The true value of a story like this lies in the conversations it inspires. We invite you to share your thoughts and feelings in the comments section below. What did you take away from this case? Have you seen similar situations unfold? Your comments can become a valuable space for others to learn from your thoughts and experiences, turning a single tragedy into a powerful lesson for our community. Before the headlines and police reports, Toraya Reid was known for something far greater than tragedy: her presence, her love, and her role within a tight-knit family. At 28 years old, she was the eldest of the Reid siblings, the one who set the tone, the one who instinctively stepped into a protective role. Her siblings often said she treated them not just like a sister, but like a second mother. To her younger brother, Naz Reid, who would go on to play in the NBA, Toraya wasn't simply a sibling watching from the sidelines. She was his anchor. Naz once described her as someone who acted like our parent, always checking in, making sure her younger siblings were on the right path. For a young man navigating the spotlight of professional basketball, Toraya's voice was grounding, a reminder where he came from and who he was at his core. Her life wasn't about fame or recognition. Friends and family remembered Toraya as someone who found joy in everyday moments. Family gatherings, laughter that carried late into the night, and a love of bringing people together. She embodied resilience and loyalty, qualities that shone through in every relationship she held dear. Those who knew her best describe her smile as magnetic. It wasn't just a gesture, but a reflection of the warmth she carried. She had an ability to ease tensions, to comfort without judgment, and to stand firm in her convictions. That quiet strength is what made her presence so vital to those around her. Though she never sought the spotlight, Toraya's life was deeply intertwined with it through her brother's basketball career. She was there in moments of triumph, cheering him on, reminding him of the sacrifices her family had made together. And yet, she was also there in the quieter moments, the phone calls after long road trips, the word of encouragement when pressure weighed heavy. For her family, Toraya represented stability. She was a voice of reason, the one who celebrated every milestone and shouldered every hardship. Her siblings leaned on her not only for guidance, but for the unwavering sense of love she gave freely. In a world that often feels uncertain, Toraya was their constant. The bond she shared with her siblings went beyond ordinary closeness. Naz and their youngest sister, Jakahaya, both spoke about how Toraya seemed to carry a natural instinct to protect. It was a role she embraced, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. That was who Toraya was, a guardian, a confidant, and a light. To introduce Toraya is to understand why her loss cuts so deeply. She was more than just a victim in a crime story. She was a daughter who made her parents proud, a sister who became her sibling protector, and a young woman with a life full of potential and love. Remembering who she was is the only way to truly honor the weight of what was taken on that September morning. The quiet hum of life at the Larson Road apartment complex was interrupted by chaos on the morning of September 6th, 2025. What had begun as a normal day for residents quickly spiraled into terror as the sound of multiple gunshots echoed through the parking lot. Neighbors froze, listening, some peeking through blinds, others rushing to dial 911. By the time police arrived, the scene was one of heartbreak. At the edge of the complex, near the exit, 28-year-old Toraya Reid lay on the ground, struck by several bullets. Officers rushed to secure the area, but it was immediately clear that her wounds were catastrophic. Despite swift medical response, her life had already been stolen. The scene itself told a story of sudden violence. Spent shell casings glimmered on the asphalt, marked by bright yellow evidence tags. A stretch of ordinary pavement, where cars usually came and went without notice, had transformed into the epicenter of a crime that would make national headlines. Neighbors described a haunting silence after the shots, followed only by the wail of approaching sirens. Some residents recounted seeing a man sprinting away from the area, his figure a blur against the backdrop of panic.
In other news tonight, Timberwolves superstar Naz Reid is mourning the loss of his older sister. Investigators believe her boyfriend shot and killed her yesterday morning in New Jersey.
Tonight, many messages of support are pouring in. Fox 9's Leon Purvis joins us live. And Leon, this obviously a very tough time for Naz and the entire family.
It indeed is, Randy and Kelsey. We've confirmed with sources close to the situation that this is Naz's sister. Toraya Reid was the oldest of the three siblings. Naz shared these photos today on Instagram of him and his 28-year-old sister Toraya when they were younger. Investigators say Saturday morning in Jackson Township, New Jersey, around 11, police responded to a shots fired call. Investigators found Toraya dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators say they believe they saw Toraya's boyfriend, Shaquille Green, running away before arresting him. Back in January, Reid returned to his Catholic high school in New Jersey, where his jersey number was retired. In the program, a family photo with his mom, two sisters, and late mentor. In a 2023 interview with the Minneapolis St. Paul magazine, Naz shared his older sister, Toraya, was super protective and treated him and their younger sister like she was their parent. Shaquille Green faces multiple charges, including murder, from the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office in New Jersey. Live in studio, Leon Purvis, Fox 9.
All right, Leon, thank you. Let's get a first.
Within minutes, investigators would identify him as 29-year-old Shaquille Green, Toraya's boyfriend. The crime scene became a painful juxtaposition. On one side, the mundane sights of suburban life. Parked cars, mailboxes, trees swaying lightly in the late summer breeze. On the other, the flashing blue and red lights of police vehicles and the grim reality of investigators working swiftly to preserve evidence. The ordinary and the horrific collided in that parking lot. Detectives and forensic teams combed the area meticulously, Every piece of evidence, every bullet casing, every footprint, was carefully documented. Witness statements poured in, painting a picture of fear, disbelief, and tragedy. Some neighbors admitted they had suspected trouble between Toraya and her boyfriend, though none could have imagined it would escalate to this. For law enforcement, this wasn't just another case. The name Reid carried weight, as news spread that the victim was the sister of NBA player Naz Reid. Reporters began arriving at the scene, their cameras capturing the crime tape fluttering in the wind. The growing crowd of concerned residents, and the devastation of a family now in the public eye. But for the officers standing over Toraya's lifeless body, the fame connected to her name mattered less than the loss itself. She wasn't just a headline. She was another victim of intimate partner violence, another life ended in a place meant to feel safe. That realization weighed heavy on those tasked with piecing together the events of that morning. As the body was transported away from the scene, silence settled once more over the complex. For residents, the image of their neighbor's life cut short in such a brutal way would not fade quickly. For her family, the true magnitude of loss had only just begun. The crime scene was a snapshot of devastation, but it was only the beginning. Investigators still had to uncover why this happened, how it escalated to such violence, and what justice might look like in the aftermath. The parking lot on Larson Road would forever be remembered not for its routine quiet, but for the tragedy that unfolded there. In the chaotic minutes after the shooting, neighbors noticed a figure moving quickly away from the scene. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone who had been seen around the complex before, a familiar presence tied to Toraya's life. As investigators canvassed the area, that figure would soon be identified as 29-year-old Shaquille Green, Toraya's boyfriend. Police wasted no time. Witness descriptions matched surveillance footage from nearby cameras, capturing Green fleeing moments after the gunfire. The urgency was clear. If the suspect was armed and dangerous, the community remained at risk. Officers spread out across Jackson Township, determined to find him before he disappeared. The search didn't last long. Within hours, Green was spotted and taken into custody without incident. There was no dramatic standoff, no prolonged chase, just a quiet arrest that belied the violence he had left behind. For investigators, it was a crucial first step toward justice for Toraya. As Green sat in custody, prosecutors outlined the charges against him. First-degree murder, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, and unlawful possession of a weapon. The weight of these charges reflected the severity of the crime, painting a grim picture of what unfolded in that parking lot. For the Reid family, the name Shaquille Green was not just a headline. It was a devastating reminder that the man who should have cared for Toraya had instead become the source of unimaginable pain. In their eyes, this wasn't just a suspect. This was betrayal. Law enforcement officials, meanwhile, began piecing together the nature of Green and Toraya's relationship. Investigators suggested signs of strain, a pattern that too often ends in violence when possessiveness or anger takes control. For them, the shooting was not a random act, but the tragic culmination of a troubled relationship. As news broke of Green's arrest, the story spread rapidly. Outlets highlighted his connection to Toraya, and by extension, to her brother Naz. The world now knew his name, his face, and the horrific allegations against him. But for the Reid family, the focus wasn't on the legal proceedings. It was on the aching absence of Toraya. The suspect had been identified, arrested, and charged. Yet for those who loved Toraya, no set of charges could undo the events of that morning. The path ahead would be filled with court dates, hearings, and the pursuit of justice. But nothing could bring back the sister, daughter, and protector they had lost. When the news of Toraya Reid's death reached her family, it shattered their world in an instant. For a close-knit family like the Reids, the bond between siblings was unbreakable, and the thought of losing one of their own, especially to violence, was beyond comprehension. In a single morning, joy was replaced with grief, and life was split into two parts, before and after. Her brother, Naz Reid, was in the middle of his NBA career, living a life filled with games, practices, and the constant roar of the crowd. But none of that mattered when he learned that his sister had been taken from him. Publicly, he remained quiet at first, but those who knew him best understood the depth of his devastation. On social media, his grief finally spilled into words. Heartfelt tributes to his sister, a plea for strength, and a reminder that she was so much more than a headline. Toraya wasn't just Naz's sister. She was his anchor, his protector, the one who grounded him even as the world watched him rise in fame. For Naz, losing her felt like losing a piece of himself. His teammates and coaches rallied around him, but they also knew there was little anyone could say to fill such an irreplaceable void. For their younger sister, the heartbreak was equally raw. In her grief, she described Toraya as someone who had always been her shield, the sister who looked out for her no matter the circumstance. "She was my protector," she wrote, capturing the essence of a bond that was built on loyalty, care, and unshakable love. Without Toraya, she was left feeling vulnerable, exposed to a world that suddenly seemed colder. The family's heartbreak extended beyond words. Photos of Toraya, once shared with laughter and joy, became tributes, symbols of a life cut short. Her smile, her warmth, her energy, all became memories that friends and family clung to, even as the reality of her absence grew heavier with each passing day. The community, too, felt the weight of the loss. Neighbors who had known Toraya, teachers who had seen her grow, and friends who had shared countless moments of joy all struggled to reconcile the violence that had taken her away. Their grief echoed that of the Reid family, a collective mourning that spread across Jackson Township and beyond. For the Reid family, every day after the shooting became a reminder of what was stolen from them. Birthdays, holidays, simple phone calls, all of it now carried the silence of her absence. And while the world discussed the legal case and the suspect's charges, the family focused on something far more personal, preserving the memory of a woman who had been their light. The heartbreak was unbearable, but it also carried within a determination to ensure that Toraya's name would not be defined only by tragedy. For the Reids, honoring her memory meant holding on to the joy she brought, the love she gave, and the strength she embodied. Because even in death, she remained their protector. Toraya Reid's murder wasn't just a tragedy confined to one family. It was part of a much larger story. Across the United States, thousands of women lose their lives each year to intimate partner violence. Behind every statistic is a name, a face, a future stolen. Toraya's story placed a spotlight on an issue that too often remains hidden behind closed doors. Her death became a chilling reminder of how fragile the line can be between love and violence when relationships turn toxic. For many, it raised haunting questions. Could this have been prevented? Were there signs? And why does society continue to see so many lives lost at the hands of those once trusted most? Experts note that domestic violence doesn't always begin with physical abuse. It can start subtly through control, manipulation, or isolation, before escalating to deadly outcomes. Toraya's story underscored this painful reality. Danger often grows quietly, unnoticed, until it erupts into tragedy. The case also spoke to the broader issue of gun violence in America. With firearms involved in the majority of intimate partner homicides, the accessibility of a weapon can instantly turn conflict into catastrophe. Toraya's death reignited conversations about the role of guns in domestic disputes and the urgent need for preventive measures. For the sports world, this case brought a sobering moment of reflection. NBA fans knew Naz Reid as a rising star, but suddenly, the spotlight wasn't on basketball. It was on the devastating loss his family endured. It reminded audiences that no level of fame, success, or achievement shields families from the epidemic of relationship violence. In communities like Jackson Township, residents were shaken not only by the crime itself, but by the awareness that this wasn't an isolated event. Neighbors realized that what happened to Toraya could happen anywhere, to anyone, regardless of background or circumstance. That unsettling truth created ripples of fear and calls for change. Advocates seized the moment to stress the importance of resources and intervention. Hotlines, shelters, counseling, and legal protections exist, but they are often underfunded or underutilized. Toraya's death became part of the rallying cry to expand these resources, to listen more closely to victims, and to intervene before tragedy strikes. Ultimately, the broader context of Toraya Reid's murder is a reflection of ongoing societal failures. Failures to recognize warning signs, to address domestic violence, and to keep vulnerable individuals safe. Her story is both deeply personal and universally urgent, urging us to confront uncomfortable truths and fight for change in her honor. As the shock of Toraya Reid's death reverberated through Jackson Township, the case against 29-year-old Shaquille Green began to move swiftly through the legal system. In the eyes of investigators, there was little ambiguity. Witnesses had placed him at the scene, surveillance captured his movements, and the weapon tied him directly to the crime. The focus now shifted from the chaos of the shooting to the calm, deliberate steps of justice. Green's first court appearance was brief but heavy with tension. Dressed in jail-issued clothing, he stood before the judge as prosecutors outlined the charges: first-degree murder, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, and unlawful possession of a weapon. Each count carried weighty implications, but it was a murder charge that cast the darkest shadow. The courtroom was somber as details of the crime were read aloud. Prosecutors painted a picture of a relationship that had unraveled into violence, culminating in a moment of irreversible brutality. For Toraya's family, hearing those words was like reliving the nightmare all over again. Each legal proceeding became a painful reminder of what had been stolen from them. Green's defense team, meanwhile, offered little insight into their strategy. Would they argue diminished responsibility? Would they challenge the evidence? For now, silence was their tactic, leaving the public and the Reid family to speculate about what could possibly be said in his defense. Outside the courtroom, the community demanded accountability. For many, it wasn't just about Green. It was about sending a message that intimate partner violence will not be tolerated. Advocates pressed for the harshest penalties, hoping that a strong stance could deter future tragedies. Naz Reid's name inevitably surfaced in headlines tied to the case, though he remained focused on grieving privately. The family chose dignity over spectacle, letting the courts handle Green while they channeled their energy into honoring Toraya's memory. For them, the trial was not about vengeance but about acknowledgement that the system recognized the depth of this loss. As weeks turned into months, court dates loomed ahead. Each delay, each motion, stretched out the pain for those waiting for closure. Justice, though deliberate, often felt agonizingly slow. Yet the Reid family pressed forward, holding on to faith that the legal system would deliver accountability for Toraya. The legal status of the case remained a work in progress, but one truth was already clear. No verdict, no sentence, no punishment could undo the damage done. The trial might bring resolution in the eyes of the law, but for those who loved Toraya, justice would always feel incomplete. In the wake of her death, the most powerful stories about Toraya Reid did not come from headlines or courtrooms. They came from the people who loved her most. Friends describe her as the kind of person who walked into a room and instantly changed the atmosphere, her laughter filling every corner, her energy impossible to ignore. She wasn't just alive. She was vibrant. Her siblings spoke often of her role as a protector. To her younger sister, Toraya was more than family. She was a shield against the world. To Naz, she was a steady voice reminding him of where he came from, even as he climbed into the spotlight of the NBA. In many ways, Toraya was the glue that held the Reid family together. Those who knew her best remembered her generosity. Whether it was a word of encouragement, a shoulder to lean on, or simply her presence, she gave of herself freely. For friends struggling through hard times, she was a confidant. For family, she was a constant source of strength. Her legacy was built not just on moments of joy, but on the quiet ways she lifted others. Community members in Jackson Township began organizing vigils, lighting candles, and sharing stories that kept her memory alive. Each flame represented not only grief, but also a commitment to remember her, to fight for others, and to ensure that her death was not in vain. Even in tragedy, Toraya's life became a source of inspiration. Her story ignited conversations about domestic violence, mental health, and the urgent need to support women in dangerous relationships. Though she could not speak for herself anymore, her life and death began to speak for countless others whose voices had been silenced. Naz Reid, in his tributes, made it clear that his sister's legacy would not fade into the background of his career. Instead, he carried her memory with him, whether stepping onto the court, addressing the media, or simply navigating life without her. Her influence stretched beyond the family into the broader community of fans who suddenly saw their favorite player not just as an athlete, but as a grieving brother. Her personal legacy also lives in the lessons she left behind. Those closest to her often reflect on the importance of cherishing loved ones, recognizing the warning signs of toxic relationships, and never taking tomorrow for granted. Toraya's life was short, but the impact she made endures. Community members in Jackson Township began organizing vigils, lighting candles, and sharing stories that kept her memory alive. Each flame represented not only grief, but also a commitment to remember her, to fight for others, and to ensure that her death was not in vain. Ultimately, Toraya Reid's personal legacy is one of love, resilience, and purpose. She may be gone, but her story continues to ripple outward, reminding us of the power of family bonds, the urgency of awareness, and the enduring spirit of a woman whose light cannot be extinguished. In the days following Toraya Reid's death, her community was thrust into collective mourning. Vigils sprang up across Jackson Township, candles flickering in the night, flowers laid gently on sidewalks, photos of Toraya surrounded by handwritten notes of love and sorrow. Neighbors who had known her since childhood stood shoulder to shoulder with strangers, all united by grief and the urgent desire for change. The tragedy also sparked a wave of advocacy. Local organizations against domestic violence used Toraya's story as a rallying cry, reminding the public that her death was not an isolated event. Her name was spoken at rallies, in community centers, and across social media, where people demanded stronger protections for victims of intimate partner violence. Advocates stressed the importance of education, teaching young people about the warning signs of toxic relationships and empowering them to seek help before danger escalates. For many, Toraya's story was proof that silence can be deadly and that awareness is a lifeline. The sports community, too, joined in. Fans of Minnesota Timberwolves, touched by Naz Reid's loss, turned their support into action by donating to domestic violence shelters and sharing resources. What began as condolences for one family soon transformed into a broader push for change, echoing far beyond the basketball court. Policy discussions also gained momentum. Community leaders pressed for stricter enforcement of restraining orders, better access to counseling, and expanded funding for shelters. Toraya's death became part of a larger conversation about how society fails victims until it is too late, and what can be done to close those gaps. In schools and colleges, educators began weaving her story into discussions about healthy relationships, reminding students that love should never come with fear. By connecting her story to real-world lessons, they hoped to plant seeds of awareness that could save lives in the future. The advocacy efforts were not about erasing grief, but transforming it into purpose. Every vigil, every speech, every donation carried the same message. Toraya's life mattered, and her death must mean something more than another tragic statistic. In this way, the community ensured that Toraya's legacy was not defined solely by violence, but by the movement she inspired, a movement of resilience, awareness, and collective action aimed at preventing others from experiencing the same heartbreak. As the final chapter of this story comes into focus, what remains is not just a crime itself, but a life of Toraya Reid, a woman whose light was stolen far too soon. It's easy to get lost in the details of the investigation, the courtroom, and the headlines, but her family and community remind us that she was far more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a protector, and a friend. When people remember Toraya, they don't think first of tragedy. They remember her laughter, her compassion, and her unwavering loyalty to the people she loved. They remember her as someone who gave freely of herself, who inspired confidence in others, and who made every space brighter simply by being in it. For her siblings, Toraya's memory is a daily presence. Naz Reid has carried her with him onto every court he stepped on, using his platform to honor her in quiet but powerful ways. For their younger sister, Toraya's spirit continues to be a source of protection, even from beyond. The bond of family, though tested by grief, has become stronger in her absence. The community of Jackson Township has also found ways to keep her legacy alive. Vigils, tributes, and advocacy events have transformed sorrow into action. Each gathering, each candle lit, and each pledge to fight domestic violence has ensured that her name endures not as a statistic, but as a symbol of resilience. What makes Toraya's story so painful is also what makes it so universal. She was young, she was loved, and she had her whole life ahead of her. Her story forces us to confront the harsh truth that relationship violence does not discriminate. It can touch anyone, anywhere, regardless of background. And yet, within that truth lies a responsibility. To listen more closely to those in danger, to intervene when warning signs appear, to create a world where women like Toraya do not have to live in fear of the people closest to them. Her story is not just one of heartbreak. It is a call to action. As we close this chapter, the lessons of Toraya's life and death ripple outward. They reach not only her family, but everyone who hears her story. They remind us that love should never be a weapon, that protection must come before tragedy, and that silence can cost lives. To honor her memory is to act, to support survivors, to advocate for change, and to ensure that others are spared the pain her family now endures. In this way, Toraya continues to protect, to inspire, and to lead, even after her passing. Her legacy lives in the hearts of those who loved her, in the determination of her community, and in the voices of advocates who carry her story forward. Though her life was cut short, her impact will continue to grow, a lasting testament to her spirit. This is how we remember Toraya Reid, not only for the way she left this world, but for the love she gave while she was in it, a light extinguished too soon, yet one that will never truly go out. Thank you for watching the story of Toraya Reid. This case is a powerful and sobering reminder of the unseen dangers that can erupt from toxic relationships and private conflicts. If this story resonated with you, and you want to ensure you never miss a deep dive into stories that matter, we ask for your support. Please consider hitting that subscribe button so you can come back and revisit this and other critical stories that need to be remembered. The more people who know about this case, the more awareness we can create about the dangers of domestic violence and unchecked toxic relationships. If you believe this story can help others, please like and share this video with your friends and family. Your simple click could be the awareness someone needs. The true value of a story like this lies in the conversations it inspires. We invite you to share your thoughts and feelings in the comments section below. What did you take away from this case? Have you seen similar situations unfold? Your comments can become a valuable space for others to learn from your thoughts and experiences, turning a single tragedy into a powerful lesson for our community. Thank you again for your time and for joining us in remembering this important story.